Okay, welcome everyone. So we're all getting organized.
Here she comes.
Okay. Oh, she's here. Oh, wonderful. Perfect. Okay. So as Devorah is joining us, I'm going to welcome to the Stolen Beam breakout session at our Kaplan Innovation Conference. We have Jeffrey Gold, is a mostly retired clinical psychologist who worked throughout his professional career with traumatized children, adolescents, and their families. Along with Devorah Jacobson, he is the co-chair of the Reparations Committee of the Jewish Community of Amherst in Amherst, Massachusetts, known as the JCA. And thankfully, now Devorah has joined us. Devorah Jacobson, after serving as a Hillel director for almost 2 decades, Devorah has served for over 20 years as the rabbi and chaplain at the JGS Life Care in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, a continuum of care campus, including long-term care and hospice services. In addition, she enjoys volunteering in various pursuits and is an active member of the Jewish Community of Amherst, where she lives on the cemetery, where she serves, I apologize, she serves on the cemetery committee, the Tikkun Olam committee, and is the co-chair with Jeffrey Gold of the Reparations Committee. She lives with her wife, Margaret Mastrangello in Hadley, and they both are avid travelers, hikers, cyclists, and ride annually for the Pan Mass Challenge to raise funds for cancer research and treatment. And their son, Jacob, lives in Tel Aviv. So welcome to you both. I will let you take it from here. Welcome to those who are participating, and you'll let me know when to share your what you send me.
Thanks very much, Karen. Devorah, hello. Glad you could join us. I was worried you were lost in cyberspace there. And this is such an intimate group, so I can say hello to Jane, Bernice, Rebecca, and Fred. Welcome and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here to talk about our Stolen Beam course. As Karen said, we are members of the Jewish community of Amherst, where only the H is silent, as we say. And Devorah and I are co-chairs of the JCA's Reparations Committee. Over the next, I guess, hopefully 40 minutes, we'd like to really provide you with a history of the Stolen Beam, the course itself, where it has traveled thus far, and hopefully some of its impacts on participants, and hopefully have plenty of time for questions too from you. So in the first part of this presentation, I'm going to give you the institutional side of the reparations work done at the Jewish Community of Amherst. And Devorah will then follow with a presentation about the Stolen Beam itself, the course. I'll then share some of the Stolen Beam's journeys thus far with Jewish, Christian, and secular participants. And Devorah will then talk about some of its impacts that, as I said, that it's had on participants. So Karen, if you could screen share that first sort of bulleted outline about the institutional work. And let's see, whoops. I think it's the middle one.
This one, Kaplan presentation, that one?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Let's see.
My computer's being slow, sorry.
I can start to talk. This is just
there it goes. Okay, here it is.
Yeah, there we go.
Is that
so?
Yeah, there you go.
Similar to many other communities, members of the Jewish Community of Amherst reacted to the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020 with a renewed intention to address issues of racial justice. At the JCA, a new committee was formed called Tzedek, which I'm sure most of you know is the Hebrew word for justice. One of the committees which derived from Tzedek was the Reparations Committee, which, as you now know, Devorah and I co-chaired. The committee initially consisted of about 16 members. Our first goal was one of directed self-study. While many of us considered ourselves relatively well educated, we quickly realized when it came to the history of and ideas regarding reparations, we were woefully ignorant. This, despite the fact that some of our families had received compensation from Germany because parents or grandparents were Holocaust survivors. We also quickly discovered, again, despite being relatively well educated, our education lacked important information from US racial history. For about a period of 6 months, we met regularly and read articles and book chapters about post-Holocaust history, US history, Jewish moral philosophy, and writings by contemporary African-American thought leaders. And some very common themes emerged from this directed self-study. Why did we not learn this history in school? Why has it taken us to this age in our lives to read and better understand the history of US slavery, post-Reconstruction America, the history of Jim Crow, terroristic lynchings, housing discrimination, and redlining, and the history of voter suppression? In reading and discussing these issues, our group faced its first challenge. Where do we go with these new understandings? There was lively debate in our group about what our goals should be. Some wanted to immediately engage with external organizations and actions centering on racial justice and/or reparations. Others wanted to focus and better understand internalized racism, that is, the internalized thoughts and assumptions that contribute to our own biases. And others wanted to focus more institutionally to impact other members of the JCA community on the issue of reparations. In the end, our first focus became more institutional, to educate the broader community about what we had learned. The Jewish religious and moral concept of teshuvah was and is the guiding principle underlying all this work. And while I am certainly not a religious scholar by any stretch of the imagination, teshuvah for me has to do with the acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And in Jewish thought, I believe this exists on both a personal and collective basis. When one atones for harms that have been committed, it requires an acknowledgement of the wrongdoing, including the need to redress those wrongs and a commitment not to engage in such wrongdoing again. The importance of this concept became more relevant the more we studied. Teshuvah to me is an ongoing truth-telling project, a process by which we learn to address harms that have been committed and improve the lives of those who have been wronged or harmed by actions, and hopefully become better human beings in the process. At this point, one might ask or comment that those of us today are certainly not responsible for the gruesome history of slavery in the United States, for Jim Crow, etc. And that is most definitely true. As Karen mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and for my entire career, I worked with adolescents and children who experienced multiple traumatic events in their lives and who learned many survival skills, many of which were maladaptive. We often said to these youth, you are not responsible for what happened to you growing up, what your parents did or did not do, how you were treated by others, etc. You are, however, responsible for how you behave now, how you treat others, how you treat yourself. I believe a parallel response is relevant here. We are not responsible for the enslavement of Africans, Jim Crow, the history of terroristic lynching, but we are responsible for trying to make our world a better place. And we are responsible to acknowledge harms that have been committed and not commit further wrongdoing to those who have been harmed. Our reparations committee thus began a series of educational engagements with the JCA community. I wrote a personal essay on Jewish identity and reparations. My colleague Devorah delivered a reparations commentary on a Torah reading for a Shabbat service. And these events were followed immediately by an open forum on reparations facilitated by our rabbi and attended by some 80 members of our community. At the same time, we were preparing a course initially based on our self-directed study and sponsored by our Adult Education Committee on Reparations. Devorah will speak more about this, but the course, named after the rabbinic debate about what is to be done when a house is built upon a stolen beam, now has a life of its own. In the spring of 2021, we petitioned the JCA's Board of Directors to consider taking a position on reparations for the descendants of enslaved African Americans. This was based on our work within the JCA, our study, our debates, our essays and sermons, our open forum, and the first installment of what was to become the Stolen Beam course, as well as the recent Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association resolution. The RRA made this resolution in March of 2021 and titled it Resolution on Reparations for Slavery, Indigenous Genocide, and Systemic Racism in North America, Turtle Island. If you are not familiar with this document, I would encourage you to read it, and it's easily available on the RRA website. To our thinking, it appeared a logical step for our institution to endorse a resolution by its affiliated rabbinical body. The board decided to sponsor its own forum on this issue, and at its annual meeting of June 2021, unanimously endorsed the RRA resolution and support for HR 40, the House of Representatives bill to establish a commission to study the issue of reparations for African Americans. Here's the board's statement. Karen, could you cue it up, please? So I'll just read through this very quickly with you. The JCA board, representing the community at large, votes to affirm the resolution on reparations for slavery, indigenous genocide, and systemic racism in North America, Turtle Island, which was adopted overwhelmingly on March 21st, 2001 by the RRA. We do this in acknowledgement that the JCA is actively involved in the challenge laid down to Reconstructionist communities in this document. Quote, to engage in ongoing learning about systems of oppression and structural racism, and to explore our participation in and our local connections to these systems of oppression and ongoing harms, and to work in solidarity with local African American and indigenous-led groups to repair harm that has been and is being done, including in the areas of education, policing, housing, transportation, healthcare, environmental justice, and incarceration. In particular, we join the resolution's call to actively support HR 40. And I won't read the rest. That's the statement from the board. I have outlined this institutional process to give you an idea of our institutional work. To be sure, not everyone agreed with the position we were taking, though the overall consensus was certainly in that direction, even with disagreements. And we also gave birth to an educational resource which has evolved and now has a life of its own. And for that story, I'll pass the baton to my colleague and close friend, Devorah.
Thank you, Jeff. Yasher Koach, and hello, everyone. We're honored to be a part of it, and I will just move right into this second section, which is about the life of its own that the Stolen Beam has taken. So, you know, people ask us, well, why did you name it the Stolen Beam? And what is this reference after all? Where does it come from? What is it about? And how is it applicable to this educational project of yours? So, as Jeff has already mentioned, and if you check your Talmud and look in Gittin, Masechet Gittin 55a, you will find there yet another rabbinic debate with especially the stars of the debate, Hillel and Shammai, trying to figure out how they might approach this question. If a house, and let's say not just a regular old house, but let's even imagine a palace, is built on a what they call a marish hagazul. So the foundation of the house or the palace is built on a stolen beam. What is to be done at that point? And I'd like to invite you, if you are not already familiar with this passage and its answer, to take a moment to consider it from the perspective of Hillel and from the perspective of Shammai. And I wonder if anybody has any thoughts about what either Hillel, how he might respond, knowing if you know anything at all about the school of Hillel, and if you don't, that's fine too. And if you know anything about the school of Shammai, how he might have thought about this dilemma of discovering that the house, even the palace, has been built on this foundation of a stolen beam. That is its foundation beam.
So I'm guessing that Hillel would call for reparations to compensate the party from whom the beam was stolen from.
Okay, and so you would so that would be some kind of monetary compensation.
Monetary compensation, unless the beam could physically be returned, although that sounds
Okay,
dubious.
but your first nod for Hillel is something pragmatic, like a compensation for the beam, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. Any other thoughts about Hillel? Anybody agree with Rebecca or disagree in terms of how Hillel might have approached it? Okay, what about any thoughts about Shammai and how Shammai might have approached it? Okay, well, so here's the way it works. Even as we find in Tractate Gittin, that Hillel, yes, as Rebecca said, he believes in a pragmatic approach. And what sense, he would ask, does it make to demolish the house when we can pay the value of the stolen beam, consider its full value for the foundation of this beautiful home? So monetary compensation would be offered to the one from whom the beam was stolen. And Shammai is what would we say? The opposite. He's going to be quite insistent that the entire house needs to be razed. That we cannot proceed with either a shack or a palace or anything in between, having it be constructed on the foundation of a stolen beam. So for Shammai, it would be to absolutely tear it down and retrieve that beam, retrieve it and return it to its rightful owner. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. There's a good reference there in Sepharia. So while it is the ruling of Hillel that carries the day, as is typical in Talmudic discussion, both rabbis argue that something must be done. On that, they agree. Something must be done to rectify the harm and for justice to be served. And both recognize that the house was built on a morally rotten foundation and that something needs to be done to rectify that. And so we have adopted that metaphor of the stolen beam, and we use it and we say it in this way, in the words actually of Rabbi Sharon Brous. Let me quote from a very powerful sermon that she gave to her congregation, Ikar, in 2017. She said as follows: "Our country was built on a stolen beam, except that it was several million stolen beams, and they weren't beams, they were human beings. And the palace they built was magnificent, but they have not yet been paid for their labor or for the terror and cruelty that accompanied it. They have not been thanked They have not been acknowledged, nor have they been fully invited to a seat at the table. So the class that the JCA Reparations Committee developed, the Stolen Beam series, we think of it as a racial justice education tool. I also like to think of it, because it's in 5 classes, we offer 5 classes. I like to think of it as a journey in 5 stages. It's a journey that involves head and heart. It's a journey that aims not just to fill our heads with content, but to stir our souls. It is most often a group experience, and that's, I believe, where its true power lies. It's been offered to a variety of sizes of groups, whether groups of 7 or 10 or 15 or 18. And oftentimes it's to folks from the same community or congregation, but sometimes it's a group of strangers who meet, usually week after week for 5 consecutive weeks, to do some very deep and respectful listening and to share what they have learned from the assigned readings and videos, to share their reflections and their reactions. And the materials, let me say, can be challenging, but we've offered a variety of ways for people to access the material. They can read it, they can listen to videos or audios. So there's a variety of learning methods incorporated into the Stolen Beam series. And I'd like to just show you with the screen share the syllabus for the course. So thank you, Karen.
Do you want me also, Devorah, to put a link in the chat to this sheet if people would like?
Please do.
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
that would be great. So you see class 1, the assigned materials, we start out with the very important piece by Ta-Nehisi Coates on the case for reparations, and that's the theme for class 1. We include Richard Rothstein. Some of you may know some of these materials, The Color of Law. We've got HR 40 included. And then we continue with guiding questions to offer folks who are partaking of this. So Karen, if you can just move it up a little bit, people can see there are guiding questions for the reading. Oh, there you go. Okay, so people can follow along with these readings that will guide them, and they come to the class ready to talk about some of these questions, and we keep going up, Karen. And then we come to class 2, where we continue to read about those who are making the case for reparations, and a very powerful article by Nicole Hannah-Jones, who, as many of you may know, is the editor and originator of the 1619 Project. And we've also got opposing views on reparations that we include. So we like to give people the sense of, what the arguments are from the other side, so to speak. So people can feel informed about that and what people are saying, people who oppose reparations, and some guiding questions to consider as well. And then we go to class 3, where we begin to take a look at some historical examples of reparations, and a very powerful piece from Susan Neiman and her book, Learning from the Germans. So here we're taking a look at the German experience as they went kicking and screaming into offering reparations to Jews and to the newly emerging state of Israel. We continue you can move up a little bit more, Karen, and we're moving to class 4, where we look at some of the nitty gritty. What would reparations look like if we were to offer them? Who would be eligible to receive them? How much would be offered? Is it about a check, or is it something more than a check? What might it pragmatically look like? And here we're helped by a variety of resources, including, maybe most importantly, the recent book From Here to Equality by William Darity Jr. and Kirsten Mullen. And we take a look at some of their ideas, as well as our own Dr. Shabazz in Amherst, who talks about the importance of also having local reparations programs. And we in Amherst, as you may have heard, are the second town slash city in the country to be embarking on a reparations program for African descendants of Africans who are living in our town. So reparations for Amherst is happening as we speak, and Dr. Shabazz is a leader on that, the African Heritage Reparations Assembly. We continue to look at other models from around the country. Evanston, of course, is ground zero, offering reparations for Blacks in their community, $25,000 housing vouchers. We continue up, Karen, and we see that universities like Harvard and other places are setting up endowment funds. The state of California is researching this its own program, etc. So that's class 4. And then finally, class 5, which when it originally, in the original iteration of the Stolen Beam, was the Jewish case for reparations. We now, as the class has evolved and been used in a variety of settings, we now title it the faith-based case for reparations. So we've got Jewish sources. You see Rabbi Brous and some others. Keep going up, please. And we've got some Christian leaders, Christian churches and institutions, and other places, faith-based places or writings related to the topic of reparations. And then at the last session, we extend the class by a half hour and we get some closing thoughts and reflections on the entire Stolen Beam series from the participants. And we do also send out an evaluation, which we ask them to fill out and return. So we get a lot of feedback on people's experience and also what they would add or take away, perhaps, or new things that they've come across that might add to the richness of the experience. And so it's a very comprehensive course. And it's really a journey of awakening for many people. As Jeff put it, we thought we were fairly well-educated folks, and we find as we take this journey, we find most of us reacting, in the way that Jeff mentioned. Why did I not know about this? And how come I'm just hearing for the first time about the Tulsa massacre or the Elaine massacre or other things that we encounter, and why was this not in our history books? So the Stolen Beam really is helping us discover what one writer calls our discovered ignorance. It's helping us realize how partial our education about American history really has been, how incomplete it has been, and how little we really knew or understood about the lived experience of African Americans. And, I just returned from an 8-day civil rights trip in the Deep South with 28 other people. We were in Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. That's clearly, and was for us, a very impactful and another way to awaken to these issues and to hearing the stories and learning the history and hearing from the foot soldiers. That clearly was a deep experience for most of us. And for those who can't do that kind of thing, or in addition to that kind of thing, the Stolen Beam is another way to access some of that information, some of that history, and to do it in a safe kind of environment where we can share from our hearts and from our heads, and do some deep learning by hearing from others what they have to say and what their reactions and thoughts were. So I think I'm gonna stop there. And obviously, after we're done with everything, we're going to open it up for questions and comments. Jeff, I think you're up next.
Yeah, I just want to check in quickly with Karen because I know we sort of got started late. What's our time frame, Karen, from here on in? Because it's almost 12:50 now.
Right, so I think I mean, we can, if people are okay staying, the Kaplan Center is taking a break from 1 to 2. Our conference is rejoining again at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So if
Okay.
the participants, each person. And I did also want to mention before you continue, the entire syllabus, like the manual, the PDF is linked through the Innovation Garden page.
Yeah.
The Stolen Beam information has been planted in the garden. Some of them we're still in progress, but
Right.
if people want to get
Yeah.
that. So
Okay, so
I don't know how people are feeling on time. We're a small group.
would 10 to 12 minutes be okay with people? I want to afford some questions, a question response time too. So I'll
Sounds
ad
good.
lib. Thank you. I'll ad lib what I have to say in terms of where the Stolen Beam has traveled over the last couple of years. It certainly first started out, as Devorah had mentioned, much more Jewish oriented, and we initially did this course with a sister synagogue in Northampton, B'nai Israel, and after that initial Stolen Beam was done, now it says 5 minutes remaining. So
I'll make sure she doesn't close us. I'll let her know.
okay. The group from B'nai Israel immediately decided to meet themselves and do their own Stolen Beam. And since that time, some of the Jewish communities have been, let's see, the Tikkun Olam Committee of Reconstructing Judaism was very supportive of the Stolen Beam, and they actually did a version of the Stolen Beam with their board of directors, and also said that they were going to pilot the program with a number of their communities. It was placed on the listserv of Trua. Other Jewish groups included a synagogue in North Carolina. Karen's own Dor Hadash, I believe, is doing a Stolen Beam now.
Not exactly, but
okay.
We're doing it in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. It's
Okay.
an independent, but
Yeah. Beth Emmett Synagogue in Evanston, Illinois, ground zero, if you will, for the local reparations movement. Evanston is doing or has just completed a Stolen Beam. And as far away as Congregation Ner Shalom in Cotati, California, did a Stolen Beam. So these are some of the Jewish groups or communities we know of. Also, the Reform Movement's Racial Action Committee also was very interested in the Stolen Beam. But the relevance of the Stolen Beam has also transcended its Jewish roots. A community, the community group that Devorah mentioned, Reparations for Amherst, which was largely responsible for petitioning the town of Amherst to commit to a town-sponsored reparations program, did their own Stolen Beam with our support. The First Congregational Church in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, did a Stolen Beam course, and that led them to further investigate their own church's history with slavery. It turned out that their first pastor was a slave owner, and in fact, there might have been unmarked graves on their property, which were the graves of enslaved. The Pelham Public Library in Pelham, Massachusetts did a Stolen Beam. And probably most importantly, and I want to mention this before I pass the baton again to Devorah, is the African Heritage Reparations Assembly, which is the Amherst Town Government's official committee to determine a reparations program, has used the Stolen Beam as part of their educational campaign in the community of Amherst. And most recently, the public library and the AHRA sponsored a Stolen Beam course for the Amherst community. which Devorah actually helped facilitate. So the JCA facilitated that stolen beam, but it was for the broader community. And I would like to add one more thing very quickly about the stolen beam, and that is that it's turned out that I mentioned all these things to give you an idea of the diversity of groups who have been able to use the stolen beam. And in particular, the emerging multiracial collaboration that the stolen beam potentially offers. None of us who helped create or co-author the stolen beam had much of an idea that it would grow and spontaneously become what it is. Not only a vehicle for deepening our learning, an encounter with our own thinking and understanding of Jewish values, and a grounding in genuine discourse on our racial history in this country, but also a bridge for a more authentic encounter with others. Devorah?
Thank you. Karen, if you can screen share my last document, please. I'll make this very quick. Jeff and I can come here and tell you that the impact has been significant on those who have participated in the stolen beam. Rather than hear from our voices about it, I thought we would share some of the reactions from those who have taken the stolen beam, so you can hear from their voices. And I'm just going to quickly read through some of the comments. I had no idea. There's an awful lot that I didn't know. I am shell-shocked. You have to come to this in communities and groups in ways that are manageable and supportive. People are asking questions and we should not judge them. They don't understand the history because many of them didn't learn it. We should engage in a call in to a conversation rather than a call out. I came into the class with very little knowledge. I got a lot of knowledge. Most exciting were the controversies. If you want to make change, you have to know the other side and understand their arguments. That's challenging, exciting, and important. My entire perspective has expanded. The whole idea that our government has for a long time created policies that enabled racism, it's astounding. Like the exclusion of Blacks from the GI Bill or Social Security, and the exclusive housing policies and rampant redlining. We indeed need a revolution in national consciousness. Each of those words is important. And finally, this class has given me the courage to get involved. I may get involved in housing issues. I recognize from all I've learned that this will be hard and it will be long, but it is right and it is just. And I'll close there and we'll open for any comments or questions if there is remaining time.
It says breakout rooms will close in 49 seconds.
Yeah.
I asked her not to close that. I don't know what happened. If we end up closing, we'll go into the main session, but we could finish up in there because two of the groups already finished, so they might be out. So if I don't know if that's automatic.
Sounds good.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Is there any sense of going to larger government like the Congress to address issues where communities have been destroyed by highways and communities were destroyed?
Sheridan, we're going to continue our conversation for a few minutes in here.
Sure. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Look, yeah, go ahead. Jane, I think you got a little cut out.
Yeah, it was a bit fragmented. So
Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah.
You know, I've been learning about the I mean, certainly when I was growing up, I moved back to Montclair, and what's his name? Fred Ferretti, who lived there, described Montclair as having a the street in the middle of town was like a red line, and realtors didn't take Blacks to Upper Montclair. There were very few Jews there also. And I know highways have been built destroying neighborhoods. A neighborhood was destroyed to create Central Park. Lincoln Center. Is there, this is something beyond individual communities' ability to address. Is there any sense of moving up to the Congress to have, larger, more significant effect on communities, and the generations of wealth creating by land ownership is something that individual communities can't address? So just wondering.
Brett?
Red, you're unmute yourself.
Just to amplify Jane's point, and kol hakavod, everyone, this is such a gift to the larger community. Near our synagogue in what is now a mostly affluent white area, was a community of freed enslaved peoples after the Civil War. And when the DC Beltway came through, they took the path of least resistance to build the highway, and it went right through that neighborhood and right by the historic church, which completely changed the drainage and undermined the foundations. That church has been worshiping in our synagogue as a large space nearby for over a decade since its building became uninhabitable, but they worked with our local politicians to get $500,000 through the state General Assembly, the State House, so it wasn't officially called reparations, but that $500,000 to this one little small historic church in a community of color in Bethesda is actually kind of joins the list. So that's another synagogue's involvement in parallel and the beginning of an example answer to Jane, but I'm sure you guys know more.
I'll just weigh in real quickly, Jane. Your question is such a relevant one, and I think that William Darity, probably addresses that the best when he wrote that the only adequate response is a federal response to the issue of reparations. And while there's some controversy around HR 40, HR 40 is only a commission to study reparations. The question about how communities have been upended and destroyed is one that is really not only in the present, but historical as well. And, I would assume, perhaps optimistically, that if HR 40 was ever passed, that commission would weigh in on the issue of housing in particular, and how that has been affected by policies which have created just what you're referring to.
I would only add to that, Jane and others, I did hear of a program hosted by the Newton Public Library, I believe it was last year, and they had Richard Rothstein as the featured speaker. He's the author of The Color of Law. And they were also talking about kind of a Black neighborhood in Newton that was destroyed for urban renewal, otherwise known as Negro removal. And I know that the leaders of the library and this committee were intent on getting more data, doing more research, and looking into this whole matter and what could be done about it in terms of acknowledgement, a proper acknowledgement, and compensation for Blacks in the town of the city of Newton. So it's, Jeff described HR 40 and the sort of top down coming from the federal government down. And this is another example of from the bottom up, where work is happening in communities and moving up, hoping to affect and impact the federal government to get going with proper reparations.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Rabbi Fred's, is that what you go by, Rabbi Fred? Is that people? I don't know if people question. So I don't know if you have taught the course at your congregation, if that was a lead-in or.
For the answer to your question is yes, quite simply.
Yeah,
we created the Stolen Beam for communities to use as they to meet their own needs. So you can modify, you can change the change whatever you want to change. And we always would like to know and hear from you what your experience has been. What Devorah mentioned about the Stolen Beam course being a group experience is really quite accurate and true. It's that process of being together and grappling with what we read and sharing the experiences of both head and heart that really are the heart or the core of the Stolen Beam experience in my mind. But yes, it is available. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me as well. Karen has our emails, and I'd be happy to share any, respond to any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah. Oh, and thanks, Rebecca. Are you a rabbi as well? I just didn't know if you, oh no, you're current. Okay. You're in Baltimore though? Okay, go ahead.
Professor.
Professor, okay. I know you were sharing so many resources with us. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I can't help myself. So I wanted to, first of all, thank you. This is great. And I've been doing some also curricular work that involves like Black Jewish relations. I don't want to go into detail right now, but I'm wondering, is there a way that the Jewish community has leveraged this to have a Black Jewish alliance, sort of to create maybe more pathways between the communities? I think we really need it right now. I mean,
yeah.
And there's been such the whole Black Lives Matter and, Zionism is racism, right? And then Black Lives Matter, denigrating Israel. And there's been such a fight. And I know that in individual pockets, there are places where things are happening, but this looks like a great opportunity to think about reparations. Historically, Jews have received reparations, and the idea of, advocacy and combined shared alliances towards reparations for African Americans. Is that happening? Because it sounds like this was created within the Jewish community and it's expanded into other communities, but particularly for the idea of Black Jewish Alliance, has that been happening at all? Or could it, or do you see that do you have a vision for it moving in that direction? Love to hear either one.
Sure. Devorah, you want to
Well,
take
Jeff,
a
I
stab
was
at that?
thinking about Kathleen's comment about the Stolen Beam. I don't know if you want to mention that.
Yeah, the Amherst Town Council about a week ago had a rather grueling meeting that lasted for hours, in which they were trying to figure out what to do about an incident that occurred between the police and some BIPOC youth. And during a community public comment, a woman, I won't mention her name, she's an NCOBRA representative, which is the national reparations, or one of the national reparations organizations of African Americans. She got on and said to the town council, the Jewish community created this Stolen Beam course. I think you all need to take it. So we got some unsolicited advertisement from this woman. But the Stolen Beam was not originally created to create a Black Jewish alliance. However, I strongly believe that locally with the African Heritage Reparations Assembly's decision to endorse and sponsor the Stolen Beam, I think the potential is very much there for multiracial collaboration. And it really is my fervent hope that is one of the directions that the Stolen Beam provides us, and enables us to do. There is, for example, 2 Stolen Beams now that may occur, which will have multiracial facilitators, first time. So it's a very long arc and it's a very long process, But the answer, you're thinking along the lines that I began to think a while ago, but it takes a very long time to build trust, essentially, I think.
Rebecca, I'd love it if you have any thoughts for us about how to do this leverage thing. We've struggled with it, as Jeff indicated, and if you have any thoughts that we can follow up with you on possibly, we would welcome that.
Sure. I mean, I think, the Black Jewish Alliance work, I know you're using the word multiracial. Well, first of all, we have Black Jews, right? We have lots of Jews of color, 1 million, right? We just learned from their most recent Pew study. So there's tons of communities now. I mean, there's so many organizations also, Jews of color. So that's one place, easy starting point. Probably the most, maybe some more trust there. But I also think that between churches and synagogues, there are rabbis, like in Baltimore, there's a rabbi and a minister who have their congregations do things together. And it's an Orthodox rabbi, which is unusual. The synagogue is called Beth Tefillah. And there are other places also. There's actually in Baltimore also, there's a Jewish and Black, it's called Hebrew. It's Jews and Blacks playing golf together, business owners. It's men, Hebrew, right? They raise money for a school, so there are things like that going on in pockets all over the place, but the reparations theme might be a unifying lens. And so I think it's about reaching out and tapping folks. But anyway, I put my email in the chat, happy to,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I do have to wrap us up. As I think, as Jeffrey and Devorah said, it's so deep work that it's time it's so much to get into. So I hope you will continue the conversation, outside of here. And I know that what's happening with me in Pittsburgh is I live in the South Hills. It's my congregation, Conservative Beth El. It's actually, we have an anti-racism committee. Someone from that committee is actually teaching a course, facilitating a course, and we have about 10 people in the course. It's gone independent, but it's mainly people from both congregations in our community. So we'll get you follow up. We're starting next week. I have my reading, and just so everyone knows, we are doing it once a month. It's a lot of reading.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't have to do it in 5 weeks.
And I think people are probably aware, at least some folks, that Reconstructing Judaism is bringing to a national plenum a resolution about reparation that would be a strong, unified voice about the importance of doing something important around this. So, yeah. Very good.
Aaron, thank you very much for hosting.
Wonderful.
Thank you
Thank you so much. And you can look on the Reconstructing Judaism website. I think something just came out at the end of October. So thank you for pointing that out, Jeffrey. So so if you're staying with us, we'll be back.
We're starting a class on this. I've already sent the link to the people who are running.
Wonderful. I didn't get to mention that Jane is you're the chair of our board, correct? Jane is the chair of the Kaplan Center board. We didn't have a chance to do introductions. So
if there's a way you can keep us posted on how the class goes in your community, we would be very grateful.
We will.
Is there a way, Jeffrey, that we can have emails for all these folks?
Yep, they're on our website.
They are.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Okay.
If you can't find it, send me an email. I'll get it.
All right. Have a good lunch.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
everyone. Have a good break. Have a good lunch. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. And I
What
will
a great
stop the
dialogue. I was
recording.
pleased to join the end of it.
Thank you.
Hey there.